what is the best solution? If you were running the Nets, what would you do in this situation?
If I was running the Nets, I'd probably retire because I can't deal with all those headaches.
He is known as the king of NBA Twitter, and he is the co-host of No Chill with Gilbert Arenas. We welcome back Josiah Johnson onto Hoopsology. How's it going, Josiah?
Thank you so much for having me back, man. Good to be here.
And good to have you back, and a lot of topics to discuss with you. And let's hop into it right now. The Nets recently hired Jacques Vaughn as their new head coach. Everybody, on Twitter and everybody within the basketball world thought it was going to be Ime Udoka as the next head coach. What were your feelings when you first heard this news, and what do you think about this Nets really this disaster so far this season?
I mean, yeah, with everything going on, situation firing Steve Nash, all the other stuff, the Kyrie stuff, everything, kind of the internal turmoil with the Nets right now. I just felt like that Udoka move, once it got reported, it felt a little weird and strange. Obviously, the Celtics suspended him for the entire season, did their research and investigation, and felt like that was the appropriate move. So it just felt a little weird that the Nets would see that and then think that Udoka would be the right choice for them. Now, I'm an Ime Udoka fan. I think he did a great job with the Celtics last year, but obviously the situations he was in off the court and the Celtics determination that, that wasn't good enough for him to be able to coach that squad that year felt a little strange and peculiar that the Nets would make that move. Obviously, over the past couple of days, the situation has changed. And I remember, Woj and Shams reporting that it was pretty much imminent that the hire was going to be made. Then the days kept going on, and then it, started to feel like it wasn't going to happen. I'm super happy for Jacques Vaughn. I think he's a great option there. I think he's obviously a former NBA player, has a storied basketball career, Southern California legend for everything he did, at Muir High School, and obviously going on to Kansas. So I think that's a good move for them. It seems like he's going to be able to connect with Kyrie and KD. Also thought it was a little weird today. I think Sean Marks said something along the lines of that KD had really no input in this decision being made, and they just wanted him to focus on playing basketball, which was, I think, different than when Steve Nash was named head coach. It seemed like Kyrie and KD were on board with that move, actually had a say and a hand in that decision being made. But at the end of the day, I think Jacques Vaughn is familiar with the team, has been on the staff now for a while, so he knows how to get the most out of these guys. So I'm excited to see what he does with the Nets this season, and just great to see him obviously getting a deal, I think, through 2024.
So where does this franchise go from here with all the turmoil? And when looking at the Nets and just seeing them play various teams within the league, I mean, they have plenty of talented players on this roster. And with their record, it's not like they're at the bottom. I mean, they are in contention here. So where do you go with this team? Do you blow it up? Do you just try to contend? I mean, what is the best solution? If you were running the Nets, what would you do in this situation?
If I was running the Nets, I'd probably retire because I can't deal with all those headaches. But I think we'll see what happens with Kyrie. Obviously, there's been varying reports. The Nets gave him the mandate of all the the 6 things he needs to do to lift the suspension to get back to playing basketball. But I think the squad still, when everybody's competing, playing hard, situation last year getting swept by the Celtics. You thought they would come out here with renewed vigor and spirit and really put their best foot forward. Obviously, there were situations behind the scenes with Steve Nash and the team that are now starting to come to light. But I feel like this squad still has all the pieces necessary to be a contender in the NBA. Obviously, it's been a shaky start, but it's been a shaky start for a lot of teams around the league. I think you look at the Warriors and what's going on out there and their struggles on the road. Really, only squads like the Jazz and the Bucks are really kind of, locked in right now and making a full go about it. But I think the Nets are still a contender level team on paper. Need to get some more out of Ben Simmons, need to get him back comfortable and acclimated and willing to shoot the ball, which I think is a big point of emphasis for them this season. But I think when you look at that squad, that big three, more than capable to make some noise in the Eastern Conference. And, if they can get it all together and figure it out, definitely have the potential to make a championship run as well.
Josiah, do you put any stock in the thought that's been circulating that Kyrie's done, he's not going to do these various things that have been asked of him to attempt to make amends for the controversy there and sharing that link? We don't have to get into all that, but do you put any stock in the idea that he's not coming back to the NBA?
I mean, I think when news first broke and just, I've watched the NBA for a long time, it just seemed a little weird in terms of what the punishment was. Obviously, Kyrie posted the link, but Kyrie, owned up to it, apologized, had a lengthy apology. And I feel like, they talk about cancel culture in the world that we live in. Everybody wanted Kyrie to apologize. Kyrie apologized, and then that wasn't good enough. So for me, it's like, what more do you want from him? Obviously, the things he's doing off the court, trying to make a donation to the ADL, and really, sitting with Jewish leaders and organizers and trying to just understand more and do a lot of things on that side. But the list of demands, especially I think the last one where he has to demonstrate to Josiah that he's learned his lesson, and it just for those of us who will follow Kyrie and know Kyrie's game, when that thing first got posted and the news first broke of what their requirements were, it felt like I raised this point on my show Out of Pocket that Kyrie may not play basketball again. Just knowing him, and it seemed a little just weird in terms of what the punishment was. But I think it remains to be seen. When you talk about Kyrie, you talk about a guy who loves basketball. He puts his heart into the game. One of the best still guards in the league, right now at this point, despite all the controversy and all the off-court stuff. So, I mean, I think the one thing we know about Kyrie is Kyrie's going to do whatever Kyrie wants to do. So if that's play basketball, he's going to play basketball, and I wouldn't be surprised either way. I wouldn't be surprised if he fulfills all those requirements, is able to come back with the Nets this season. Wouldn't be surprised if he just sits out for the rest of the year, becomes a free agent, and kind of figures it out there. And I wouldn't be surprised, too, if he just says enough's enough, and I've had enough of this. I'm going to retire.
Another thing I wanted to circle back to is with Coach Udoka. There was talk when this controversy was going down this summer. Now, granted, we're in a society that loves hyperbole, loves to exaggerate, loves to go for these big takes. But there were credible media members that were saying, very real possibility I could see Coach Udoka has coached his last game based on this controversy. Now, we don't know, of course, all the details and all that hasn't been made public. But is it safe to assume now, based on him being that first candidate for the Nets in that first consideration, that he is indeed going to coach again at some point in the NBA?
I mean, I think, and again, this is all based on the information that we have now.
Sure.
The Celtics conducting an internal investigation. The Nets initially saying, we were good on that, we're going to hire him, but then doing their own investigation and decided that Jacques Vaughn was the head coach. I think it remains to be seen. One of the media members you mentioned, Matt Barnes, my former teammate at UCLA. Matt posted a video initially, deleted that video, and then came back and said, based on the reports and things that he had heard, that he wouldn't be surprised if Udoka never coached in the NBA again. I think, it's hard to tell. I don't want to say one way or the other just because I don't know all the details and information of that investigation. A lot of that stuff really hasn't been made public yet or brought to light. But I will say that, it seems like, the Celtics were standing firm in that 1-year suspension. But, if they wanted to just fire him, they would have fired him, which made it a little weird. Obviously, that when the Nets came calling, that the Celtics said we were fine with that, and we weren't going to hold him up. You'd think they would want some compensation. We've seen coaches traded before. Something for a coach of that caliber, who's 2 games away from winning the NBA Finals. But I think it all remains to be seen. Based on the information that we've been presented, I would hope that he get the opportunity to coach again. Obviously, he's going to serve his punishment, and once that's done, he's paid his debt to the basketball society. Like, he should be able to continue doing what he loves. But again, if more information comes to light that maybe refutes that belief that I have right now, that remains to be seen. But at this current juncture, I feel like Coach Udoka deserves another chance to coach in the NBA.
So, just another question on this point, and then I want to shift gears. How have you think Adam Silver has handled all these controversies, along with Robert Sarver as well, with the Phoenix Suns? And just talking about Kyrie, I mean, that got national media attention. And I think the season, in terms of the play on the court, has been phenomenal. I mean, at least in my opinion, you don't usually see this regular season's games being this competitive, even from just looking at a league pass game late at night. It's been fantastic basketball. But yeah, we're talking about this. Do you think Adam Silver has any blame in that regard, just in terms of how he's handled these situations so far?
I mean, look, at the end of the day, this is a franchise situation first, and then obviously when the league needs to step in and do what they need to do. So allowing the teams to handle this stuff internally, I think, is the first step. And Adam Silver's done a good job of that. But obviously, when he needs to step in and he needs to flex his commissioner muscles, these are things he has to do. And it's a position, I think all of us can sit here and, say what we would do if we were commissioner, but we have no idea the magnitude and gravity of all the things he's doing, the calls he's fielding behind the scenes, different sponsors. I think, I'm a big Twitter guy. We're seeing that with Twitter right now with Elon Musk taking over. just how quickly these things can change. So everybody likes to pretend, when they're on their couch, oh, I would have did this, I would have did that, and this is how I would have handled it. That's not a job that I would envy at all. I mean, I think it's definitely a difficult position to be in, but I think Adam Silver is doing the job to the best of his ability. And to your point, like you mentioned, for me, this is probably, I can't think of a bad league pass matchup. In years past, there's games, hey, there's no way I'm watching this game, because I don't want to just be bored to death. But I think every team has something to offer, whether that's the Orlando Magic with Bol and Paolo and that whole crew. There's just excitement. Houston Rockets, obviously a young team that you can just see the trajectory they're on right now. They're going to take some lumps on the chin now, and they might be at the bottom of the league for a little bit once that squad matures. But I feel like across the board, pretty much every team except the Lakers right now, which is tough watching. But even me, I'm a LeBron fan and rolling with the Lakers right now. You see some stuff that gives you some hope and optimism that this squad can get it together and at least finish in that top 10 to be able to make a playing game. But like I said, Adam Silver's got to be the commissioner for all 30 teams. Each team has stuff going on behind the scenes that needs to be dealt with and addressed. I feel like to the best of his ability, he's doing a good job right now. And again, that's not a position that I envy or would ever want to be in.
So you mentioned the Lakers, and it seems like there's some glimmer of hope, according to yourself. So, where do you see the patches of the light at the end of the tunnel here for this team? Because they've just been getting killed ever since the season started.
So, I mean, I think, Darvin Ham coming in, renewed sense of toughness, really, really doing a great job on the defensive side, which I feel like was something that was lacking last season. Last season, their defensive effort was extremely poor. It made games really difficult to watch. This time around, this season, the squad is really coming through with that defensive intensity and keeping themselves in a lot of ball games. They still can't, pretty much every game, it's something new or something different that comes into the fold that they need to fix and correct. But, third quarters have been an issue, obviously, for this team this year, last year. But you just see, the three-point shooting when they first came in was abysmal. I think it was record-setting in terms of how terrible it was. But you see if this squad can actually get it together, be a cohesive unit, and actually learn to start just playing together, playing for each other, that they can start to put some wins on the board. I think moving Russell Westbrook to six man, I'm a Westbrook guy. I'm a UCLA guy. I'm a big fan of his. But you got two ball dominant guards in him and LeBron. And obviously LeBron is running the show right now. It just didn't really make sense, even from that trade in the beginning. Like, how are they really going to address this with spacing and usage rates and all that good stuff. But seeing Westbrook come off the bench, he reminds me of the Russell Westbrook who was at UCLA, early on in his career when he was looking to become a lottery pick, but just had something to prove, had a chip on his shoulder, playing with that fire, with that hunger. And it's great to see after everything he dealt with last year in terms of Lakers fans just constantly packing him up and the negativity and the vitriol thrown in his direction, to see fans cheering him, to see fans giving him MVP chants, and to see Russ actually, endearing himself and engaging with the fans now. I'm not a big fan of all the rock the babies and the he's too small when your team's not performing at the level it needs to perform at. Save that for when you're up 20 and you're actually going to win games. But do like to see him out there smiling, working hard. And he's been a bright spot on the team this year. Obviously, it's premature and very early, but talk about sixth man of the year. But just to see him taking that, obviously he's the guy who started for the bulk of his career, now having to go back into a situation he's not really familiar with, but him taking that, being respectful of it, not trying to stir up a lot of stuff with the media and things like that, being embracing of his role is good to see. And hopefully this squad, once they can obviously become a cohesive unit, start putting some wins on the board. I feel like top 10 in the West is definitely a target and a goal that they can reach. Don't know much more beyond that, but it has been good to see this squad playing together, playing exciting basketball. On one side of it, also, it's been a lot frustrating and disappointing to see a lot of kind of same stuff that we saw last year in terms of just bringing that effort every single night on the offensive end and giving themselves a chance to actually win basketball games.
As a Lakers fan, what are you kind of feeling as far as direction of the team? Because I mean, trying to put myself in Lakers fans' shoes. I mean, I think my take would be, look, we got AD, we got LeBron. At a certain point, like, you got those names. Let's just roll it out. Let's get this done. Let's see where this goes. But in terms of, not having very many future draft picks, et cetera, I mean, would you be more along the lines of wanting to see one or a couple of those big pieces go and like just start the rebuild if we're not going to be in that title talk contention? Or we've got two guys on our roster here, well, three guys, excuse me, in the NBA top 75. Let's just see what they can do.
Well, it's a hard situation, man. I'm a lifelong
Sure.
LeBron fan, but LeBron entering year 20 now, he's still playing at a super high level. But you can definitely see, obviously, we see those commercials, LeBron versus Father Time. And this is no knock to LeBron. The amount of minutes he's played, the amount of mileage on his body, the fact that he's still able to be competing at a high level, putting up 25 points a game is remarkable. But this is also not a position he needs to be in at this stage of his career, right? You know,
Mm.
he needs to really be saved and gearing up to the playoffs. Said the same thing last year. Like, it was great to see all the 30-point, 40-point games. But, you know, especially now when you're playing this 82 game season with the back-to-backs and all that type of stuff, there needs to be time for LeBron to take breaks. Like, he really only needs to play 60, 65 games, space it out so he's never really playing back-to-backs, getting as much rest as needed that somebody in their 20th season deserves. And you'd like to see AD really step to the forefront and lead the squad. And AD's been playing, pretty solid, especially on the defensive end. But he'll do things like drop 20 in one half and then literally won't, take one shot in the second half and score 2 points. So I feel like that's on the coaching as well to get AD more involved. This needs to be the guy that really is the franchise player at this point, that's really guiding and leading this team, especially in the regular season. So he's also dealt with some back injuries. And I know he said before the season he wanted to play all 82 games. And my initial reaction was like, no, we only need you to play, like, again, 65, 70 games. Don't worry about doing this. Is a long, grueling season. And it's also, when you're looking at the schedule, you're looking at games. Here are games that we can win. Here are games that we probably can't win. So you don't need to waste a lot of energy and attention on the games that you're not going to win anyway, and really now fatigue these guys. Like, they're playing Sunday, Monday back-to-backs and things like that. It just doesn't make much sense. Where if you're going to take that loss anyway, you might as well rest these guys up and really make sure you're putting their best foot forward in games that are winnable. But this is something that they're going to have to figure out. I wasn't opposed to a trade. I know everybody's talking about mortgaging and bankrolling their future with the first round picks. But now as the games go on, now it just becomes, is it actually worth it? You're going to have a lot of situations once the season ends. Guys going to be out of contracts, abilities to make moves without obviously having to surrender those first round picks. Guys are going to be on the free agent market. You think about somebody like Kyrie, just depending on how his career pans out and what he does this season. But there's going to be opportunities now to sign free agents, to get guys out there where you don't need to jeopardize and sacrifice those picks. So as these games go on, it becomes a point of, are you going to give up all this value now for 50 games, for 40 games? And, as you get closer to that trade deadline, does it become worth it? And it's almost like, well, if you weren't going to make that move before the season, why would you make the move now at the trade deadline when we're 40 games in? And, the opportunity to make a playoff run is far less significant. So that's just me. I'm not a GM. I'm not in the front office. So that's just my opinion. I'm sure, a lot of Lakers fans feel differently about it. But I think at the end of the day, if they can make moves that make this team better, and this is also, I think we have to keep in mind that we haven't seen Schroeder yet, who's obviously been injured, Thomas Bryant, who's been injured. So this is the team that's not yet whole. So we'd love to get at least a small sample size of what this team looks like when it's as close to healthy as possible. But at the end of the day, just making that move for me, like as these days go on now and these games start to pile up, it just becomes less and less of a strategic and a smart move.
So you mentioned you're a big time LeBron fan, follow his entire career. Where do you see his next move being? I mean, he won the title in the bubble, and there's just been a struggle since. Does he get this? Do you get the sense that he stays in LA, or does he want to look for kind of greener pastures? I know there's been plenty of speculation about him wanting to play with his son once he gets into the league. But where does he kind of go from here? In terms of with the Lakers struggling, like, do you predict what his next move might be to the best of your ability?
Well, I believe he's under contract for at least one more year, if I'm not mistaken. So
That's right.
it's I think he's in LA, but to the point,
Yeah.
he's getting on. I think for me, looking at LeBron now in year 20, just in terms of conserving energy, I don't think he needs to be as ball dominant anymore as he was in years past. I think this team performs well when they're really pushing tempo and moving the break, and guys are knocking down their shots. So you'd like to see a situation. I kind of joked early on in the season, but it feels like with him and Westbrook when they're out there together, kind of like those Showtime days with Magic Johnson and Norm Nixon, from the standpoint of you got two guys who can really push tempo, who can make good passes, get assists, and really start leaning more towards that. It's kind of tough. LeBron, for the bulk of the later stages of his career, has been super ball dominant. And you're talking about, holding the ball 10, 12, 14 seconds on an offensive possession. And frankly, that just, again, is adding up to his mileage. It's fatiguing him. And you can see he doesn't have the same ability to get to the basket and blow past defenders that he used to have. And that's fine. That's a part of the game. That's a part of the aging process. But it's now, how does he adjust his game? Does he to shift more to a point forward or a power forward type of role where he lets somebody else be more ball dominant and concentrates on knocking down his 15 to 18 footers, being less dependent on having the ball in his hand the entire game to be able to make things happen. But again, LeBron's going to do what LeBron wants to do. I think when you look at this Lakers organization, this franchise, all the championship banners, the legacy, living in Los Angeles, I don't think I wouldn't see him going somewhere else. Bronny's a couple years away. Bronny's obviously a senior in high school now, going to need a couple years of college to get to where he needs to get to. So you're talking about LeBron in year 23, year 24 of his career, which is just crazy to think about, and just wondering how much longer this is going to go on for. Obviously, he's got, you look at somebody like Kareem who played 20 years, but Kareem had to go to college for 4 years versus LeBron who came straight to the pros. So those 4 years can now get swallowed into his professional career. But, just the fact that he's doing what he's doing now at year 20, and also just as a LeBron fan, I think about Kobe in the later stages of his career, and you could start to see, the father time would caught up with him. He's suffering the injury, the Achilles injury, and coming back, for those last couple of years, he was doing basketball. He was playing basketball because he loved the game, but you could see the wear and tear and just the toll that it took on his body and his mental and, physically and emotionally and all those type of things. So for LeBron, it's getting to that point. And as LeBron fans, I'm a lot more appreciative of what Kobe fans went through in the latter stages of his career, what MJ fans went through in the latter stages of his career. But it's really hard to compare those guys. MJ obviously took some time off to go play baseball. So he was still a little bit fresher and younger in the latter stages of his career versus somebody like LeBron, who you're talking about 10 finals runs and just playing consistently into June, into mid-June every single season, and then having to come back and do it again, playing in excess of 100 games a year. So, last year, obviously it was a struggle and it was tough for them to not make the playoffs. And even in the year previous when AD got hurt, but you're talking about, bubble championship that next year, that squad was still solid. If AD doesn't get hurt in that playoffs against the Suns, who knows where the chips fall. But, you got to feel like the Lakers were on the verge of going up 3-1 before AD got hurt, that team could have made a championship run. So it's tough to look at that squad and last year's squad and put those two teams together and those two seasons together and say the same thing. But now it's looking like last season is going to be a lot like, what this season is shaping up to be. But ultimately, LeBron's got to start to just make decisions and decide how long he wants to be able to extend his career, because doing the same things he's been doing, it looks like it's definitely going to shorten that time frame.
With the legacy talk, I have to, of course, bring up arguably the most impressive record that LeBron's going to break this year in the NBA with Kareem's, of course, scoring title, all-time leading scorer in NBA history. And LeBron, a guy, you brought up a lot of these points. I mean, he's known not really as a scorer primarily. He became that. He grew into that, but known for his versatility, known for his basketball IQ and his durability, certainly. How big of a deal do you think this is? I mean, there's been a lot of talk about downplaying this in LA because LeBron kind of doesn't belong to the Lakers alone. But it still seems like, as far as a feather in your cap, so to speak, for your legacy, this is a huge deal for LeBron. And do you think that we're going to get the appropriate level of hype for what he's about to do?
Like, I think regardless of where the Lakers are at that point in the season, this is a record that, a lot of people felt was unbreakable. Obviously, we've been monitoring LeBron for years and that trajectory, but you do that with a lot of guys. And as the years go on and, there's different variables and factors and obstacles that prevent them from getting to that level. But for LeBron to consistently do what he's been doing, scoring the basketball at a high level, at a high field goal percentage, it's remarkable. And I'm a big Kareem fan. Again, I'm a UCLA guy. So Kareem is my GOAT. LeBron is my GOAT contemporary. Kareem is my GOAT all time for everything he did on and off the court. What I mean? Whether the civil rights stuff or almost beating Bruce Lee up in Game of Death, just the things he was able to accomplish. But I think it's a big moment. It's a phenomenal moment. I feel like Lakers fans will give him the love and respect he deserves for that moment. And again, I know there's been a lot of talk on social lately, like, oh, they're gonna boo him or whatever. Like, look, Lakers fans, just being around here since LeBron came, the Lakers demand excellence. Lakers fans demand excellence. So, you talk about them being tough on guys. Yeah, they were tough on, everybody. They were tough on LeBron at a point, early during this marriage that they have together. They're tough on AD, KCP, Kuz. Every single player on the team can get it. Westbrook obviously received it at a level I don't think I've seen. But conversely, like when Westbrook performs and plays well, this is also a squad that'll give you MVP chance. So, it's Hollywood. We like excitement, we like winners. So when things don't go that way, they're going to be very vocal. They've seen a lot of championships in their day. You're talking about a lot of fans who grew up during the Showtime era. So they've seen a high level of winning basketball, formerly in Inglewood, the city of championships, now in downtown LA. And I think they're going to give him the love and respect that he deserves for that moment. I think you can't be a basketball fan and however you feel about LeBron, not appreciate the fact that he's going to now break this record and become the new all-time highest scorer in NBA history.
Josiah, I want to ask you about your observations earlier on in the season. Anything else that stands out to you? Anything that surprised you in terms of what you're seeing so far?
I think just the Warriors. I mean, you talk about it looks extremely uncharacteristic of the squad. I know they've had some issues on the bench and getting guys ready to go. But when you talk about a unit that has Steph Curry, who is making his claim as the best player in the league right now, coming off of Finals MVP and everything he's been able to accomplish in his career, Draymond, Clay, and just the amount of championships and winning basketball that organization has played. In years past, if you had a 15, 20-point lead on the Warriors, they could eat that thing up, 6-7 minutes of game action, and you would just watch it happen in real time and know there's nothing you could do about it. We're now seeing their road struggles and some of the teams they're losing to. Definitely feels like a championship hangover. But again, this is a squad that I think, once the playoffs come, they're going to be able to lock in and get it together. So I know Warriors fans are acting like the sky is falling, and definitely there needs to be some work done, and maybe there's some moves made in that franchise. But when you talk about that big three core unit along with Andrew Wiggins, Jordan Poole, like guys are going to figure it out, and they've already done it at a high level and won championships together. So I think they're going to be all right. But it's definitely been interesting to see just their road struggles and, watching games where they have leads and then them kind of giving up leads, just stuff that like super uncharacteristic of what Warriors basketball has been for the past few years, when all the core is locked in and when Clay's healthy, when that whole crew is together. But, it's going to be interesting to see. And I feel like this Western Conference, like we talked about earlier in the show, Western Conference, Eastern Conference, just league pass in general, you're starting to see that changing of the guard, which, you see every, 5, 6, 7 years. But when these teams that you didn't expect to do much are now performing where everybody thought the Jazz were going to be tanking, for Victor Wembanyama. And, this is a squad that's out, they're going to tank all the way to the playoffs and trying to make a championship push. But again, it's early in the season. There's a lot that can go, the season's so unpredictable that, we looked at the Celtics last year and I think they were like 23-25 or something like that, during the midway point, and then proceeded to go on a great run and get all the way to the finals. So you never really can just tell what's going to happen. So never get too excited or too down early in the season. Obviously, Lakers fans starting to get close to that point, the squad's 2-8, and it's like, all right, well, what's going to happen now? Because you literally just want to try to get to 500, and that requires a 6-game winning streak at this point, which is not realistic. But are they going to be able to close the gap and start piling on more wins and losses? But I think across the board, I'm just excited for this NBA season. As I've gotten older in life, I just really get to, learn to appreciate just seeing high-level basketball. And we're also seeing now these young guys, the Lukas, the Trays of the world, the Ja Morants of the world, that are now stepping into, superstardom and really embracing that role and playing at levels that, some might have expected, but just still incredible to see that happening.
We've asked a few people this, and given what you see on a day-to-day basis and the folks that you're talking to, your perspective on the league as a whole, I'd be curious to know your thoughts too. Is tanking as big of a problem as people make it out to be? Is it a major, minor problem, somewhere in between that, from what you're seeing? Mentioning the excitement level, another team we haven't mentioned yet that I think are pretty fun to watch are the Pistons as well. And that's, one of those teams that is still getting their act together, figuring things out. A lot of young talent on that team. You don't expect teams that young to go very far. But back to the question, I mean, do you think tanking is as huge of an issue that people make it out to be?
I mean, look, I think at the end of the day, players are going out there and trying to give as much of a maximum effort as possible. Tanking is more of a front office situation when you don't, put the
Yeah.
pieces in place to give your team the opportunity to win. I think if you go ask guys around the league, they're not laying it up or whatever. These guys are trying to get new contracts. They're trying to make money to support their families. So from a player perspective, I don't believe that they deliberately go out there and try to tank. Now, from a front office perspective, you can definitely create situations where, when you look at the Lakers, for example, I don't think the Lakers are deliberately trying to tank. But when you have an offseason, they don't really make any major moves to really fucking, really improve the roster to the level it needs to be. Then that tanking situation just kind of comes naturally. But it's great for me to see squads like the Pistons, who have been down for a few years, but they start to get the Cade Cunninghams, the Jay Niveys, those type of players in, and make that basketball exciting. I always think about OKC back in the day when it was young Durant, young Westbrook, young James Harden. You could just see, and this is something I was talking to KJ Martin, who's on the Rockets this offseason. It's one thing to be, a young team versus a bad team. Like the Rockets, they're a young team, right? Young teams are going to lose games. That's just is what it is. So you might be at the bottom of the league or one of the worst teams in the league from a young team perspective. But once you get old enough now, you start to become vets and you start to learn this game. It reminds me of those OKC Thunder squads where you saw those squads and all right, once KD and Westbrook and Harden figured out, just get a little bit older, become more vet savvy, like these are going to be winning basketball players. Like these guys aren't, their team may have a losing record, but these guys aren't necessarily losers. It's a lot different than, an older squad where they're performing at a low level and they really have guys that have been in the league long enough where that shouldn't be the case. It's a learning process for the young teams. It's a little tough when you look at a squad like the Lakers that has a lot of veteran presence, but just can't get it together. But I think, tanking is a part of the game. It just is what it is. Same thing with the NFL, other squads. When you see an opportunity, especially with this draft coming up and some of the talent that is coming through there, yeah, some teams are, if I can get a guy who can completely change my franchise, but to the NBA's, I don't even know credit per se. I don't know if I agree with it or disagree with it. I like the NFL model where, look, the worst team in the league is going to get the number one pick. The NBA tries to make it a little bit difficult. I'm not, I don't like to let things rely on ping pong balls. If this is the worst team in the league, just, it's obvious that they should get the best player to help make them become a better team, not let their fate be decided by, a ping pong lottery type system. Lottery is cool. It's entertaining when you're watching it, but it's also like, you see teams sometimes get screwed out of getting that top level talent. So I don't, I think at the end of the day, there comes a point when, that kind of thing works if you're trying to build now and shore up that roster. But eventually, these teams got to start going out there and producing.
Absolutely, yeah, and I'm with you on on your lottery point there.
It's a, I see it both ways. It's exciting. It's entertaining. Of course, I'll see the envelopes unfold, but I appreciate the NFL model. We're like, this was the worst team in the league. Worst team in the league gets the best young talent to come in and hopefully not make them the worst team in the league next year.
Yeah, and I just don't think we'd have 5+ teams like fighting to get 5 wins over the course of the season. I think at some point it maybe is too embarrassing or something along those lines, and just not overall worth it. Even if we got a guy like Wemby coming in who seems like he's going to be phenomenal. I mean, are we really going to have a third of the league in single-digit wins? I mean, I would certainly hope not, and assume not.
Oh, totally correct. Josiah, thank you very much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Please let our viewers and listeners know where they can find you on social media and then all the platforms you're on and any other projects you're working on for the rest of the year as well.
King Josiah 54 on Twitter. We'll see for how much longer. Just, there's things going on that side that, making me a little nervous. Twitter and Instagram. You catch me on the No Chill podcast with Gilbert Arenas, Out of Pocket on Wave. Still doing a bunch of different stuff behind the scenes, but really appreciate you guys having me on, man.
I appreciate the time, Josiah. Thank you very much.
All right. Take care.